YouTubers? This is Kevin from Survivor Super Fun Time Show. Arguably the best episode of the season. Best episode of the season by far for season 48. I mean, some of the pre-merge stuff was really fun. It was some, some of like the early hits for a great actor. This is kind of the peak for a great actor right now, which is great. I mean, even for this episode, I got my Liz Wilcox shades on just to talk about it. So many things to talk about, including obviously the big boot that occurred this episode, and we'll get into that in a hot second, but make sure to hit the subscribe button to the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. I would appreciate it greatly. Helps grow this channel. So getting into the episode, for this recap, I think we're going to really hit kind of the biggest bullet points and talk about some of the biggest things. We're going to actually bury the lead a little bit, and we're going to talk about the vote out of David. The exit of David at Tribal Council was pretty significant. I was rooting for it, and the reason why I was rooting for it was not because I don't like David. A lot of people on the internet don't seem to really like David too much, and by extension, they really took a huge hit to Mary's popularity as well, since she was, as Kyle would say, they kind of look like, I'm not going to even say it, but they look like more than friends, right? David is an interesting character in a way because he's not that interesting of a character, but he was at odds with a lot of the interesting characters like Shauhin, Kyle, Kamilla. This idea of having a strong, loyal alliance, mostly driven by men, is something that Survivor fans don't really act well toward anymore at this point, and that's fine. That's fine. I think one of the biggest pieces is that it was just full of, hypocrisy. No one really believes in the idea that these big, strong alliance can be loyal 100% to the end. I mean, there's 5 people in the alliance, and you want to bring in a 6th in Mary. How was that ever going to work? It never was, right? So that's where it always felt a little bit silly. But that's also where it stagnated the game, because there were so many people like Eva and Joe that were really into the idea of it. They thought it sounded really fun to do challenges with David and kind of duke it out from a legitimate competitive standpoint. I mean, Joe has said multiple times he would give up his game for Eva. So he's pretty clearly going to stick to it, and Eva does not seem to have much of a complex strategic bone in her body. And David, same thing. He's playing the game straightforward. I mean, he essentially tanked his game because last episode, when Mary had a preference, she decided, I think that in order for us to fully trust in Shauhin, that means Kamilla needs to go. And that pushed the issue with Kyle. Kyle fought back. He tried to be reflexive a little bit. And David couldn't understand why Kyle did not just adhere to what Mary said and to what David said. And that put Kyle on the other side of David. And that caused an issue to the point where David in this tribal council has gotten himself voted out. Also, let David be a cautionary tale for anyone who's going to play the game. It's one thing to be at the top of the hill. You feel really great. You're the king. However, maintaining it is so difficult. And the biggest thing is the way you talk to people, the way you push your agenda. You have to be able to look at the situation from other people's shoes as well as your own. The problem, the whole reason why Kyle pushed so hard is because David pushed so hard when he didn't have to. He kept saying over and over again, I don't know why it was such a big deal. Why was it difficult to vote out Kamilla? I told you, Kyle, this is what we're doing. Why is this difficult? And that's because he just could not for a second think about being challenged. And because of that, an episode later, this episode, David is sitting at Ponderosa with Chrissy and Cedric. I'm sure it's a fun time, but it's not exactly Survivor now, is it? I thought it was the right vote out for everyone in the game, and as a viewer, it's really the turning point, the watershed for the season most likely. Because once you have him out of the way, everyone has to look in the mirror now. Because even if David did do like Joe and Eva wrong, yet now they've done him wrong. And that's okay. That's part of the rules. That's the fun thing about Survivor, right? It's part of the rules. This is what we do. But now everyone has to look at each other and say we're all sinners. And that's great because that means everything gets a lot easier from a strategic standpoint and also gets a little crazier. And I love that as a fan. Poor David, you had to question Joe's integrity. You had to. I love Joe. And Joe, I think he's right. I think that the group changed their mind, so therefore Joe changed his mind. But that was the wrong lever to pull for David, and it really bit him in the ass because, yes, it's a calculated risk. You get one of 2 reactions from Joe when you decide to press him on his integrity and sticking with his word. One, you make the guy who's super integrity feel bad about betraying his word, which I don't think he did, but I can understand the argument from David. Or two, he gets super offended that you attacked his character, and then you get voted out. That's exactly what happened this go around. And David, big character in some ways, not a huge personality, just a big guy, strong, involved in a lot of the challenges. I mean, hell, he almost won this last one, which obviously was a very important one for David. But with him going, it's going to open up the game so much more than he ever could by sticking around. And unfortunately for David, just like what happened in the immunity challenge, sometimes, you have too strong of a grip. You really try to hold on to the thing way too tight to the point where you just make one wrong mistake that will cause you to stumble, and then you're out of the game. So it's very fitting that he lost the immunity challenge in the same way that he essentially was voted out of the game. Poor Mary. Mary's gone through it, I will say, from fan opinion the last couple of weeks. Not that she cares. She's pretty cool. She doesn't care about that stuff. But someone that in the pre-merge, everybody was like, I love. Then she links up with David, who actually is a pretty smart person, I think, to link up with going into the merge. I mean, if you're Mary, you had no one anyway once you went over to the new Loggy, and you got him coming from the crappy Vula. He's the top of the anthill, and you join up with him, and you're starting to get a little bit of influence. You even get backdoored basically into this top 6 alliance. But, it all falls apart. Largely, it seems like, due to your opinion on some of this stuff. And this feels like a sad but true statement about someone I love in the game, Mary. She's wonderful. But boy, as a player, she is like kryptonite if you want to actually do anything. I mean, has anything gone Mary's way? Anything other than the shot in the dark? Has any actual vote that she's driven ever happened? Because it seems like every time Mary won something, she does not get it. So I'm not very surprised that David ended up getting voted out instead of her intended target, which was Kamilla. Now with your main ally gone, no one here is to look out for you. Although, into the final 8, it looks like you possibly have an alliance of 4 people left over from the 5-strong alliance, and then some, I guess we'll call it cast-offs of Mary, Star, Mitch, and Kamilla. Although the Kamilla is more locked in than probably even Mary or Star or Mitch know. So Mary's got a tough one ahead of her in the next episode. I think she can recover. I actually fully expect her to recover. I still think she's maybe in my final 3. I mean, it's so tough at this point. The big 4 alliance is probably what we have to look at. I'm confident at this point Kyle probably wins the game, which I think is great. Who goes with him? I don't know. Camilla's up there in that conversation. Shauhin's up there in conversation. And I actually think Joe is up there, whereas I did not think that before. But he had the cojones, the strategic cojones. Of course, he's got massive cojones otherwise. He's a fire captain. But he's got the strategic cojones to do what he needs to win the game. So I'm super excited to see how that shakes out. And it's going to be really interesting. And I think Mary still has the possibility of navigating to that end. Let's talk about Eva's advantage. I mean, in this episode, we saw her go to the end of the beach and have the opportunity to get more. Not only did we see it, Shauhin saw it too. And I'm intrigued why Shauhin didn't continue to follow Eva, but maybe producers didn't let him. I don't know, that happens sometimes. But she goes into that little mini journey where she has the opportunity to play a game. And the first, right off the bat, she's like, listen, you get an extra vote. That is yours, Eva. Now, if you want to risk it, you can open up one of these 2 pieces of bamboo, and inside, you'll either get nothing or you'll get safety without power. That's basically the thing where you can leave tribal council and you can go home that night, but you don't get to cast a vote. So you're safe, but you basically leave your allies to hang out to dry. So she risks her extra vote and she actually gets the safety without power, but she does not risk to get the immunity idol. Myself, I thought that was a good idea. However, I do think it's funny that in public opinion, a lot of people believe that the extra vote was actually much more crucial to Eva's game than the safety without power. I would happen to disagree. I think automatically anything that gives you immunity is something that you should take. Now, obviously, the risk of the extra vote, I'm not saying it's better with the risk, but like if you got to choose between the 2 advantages, extra vote or safety without power, I think you go safety without power every time. No doubt. How can you bet on anything more than guaranteed immunity? And you shouldn't. Eva's putting a big target on her back as we speak. I don't know how aware she is of that necessarily. I mean, she has a great safety blanket in someone like Joe, and it looks like in Kyle as well, and Shauhin. But she's stacking those advantages, and someone like Shauhin is definitely going to vote her out. Kyle will do it too. So unless she's got that necklace, it's going to be a problem. Or unless she has a safety without power, it's going to be an issue. The extra vote's not going to help that much when you have, a final 7 and 5 of them are going to vote against you. So I think Eva made the right choice on that one. I think going for the safety without power was correct. On this side, I would like to say Kyle masterfully did this episode. Obviously, he set up David being voted out. Everyone was on board. I mean, getting Shauhin to think that really the whole reason why this was happening was to protect Shauhin and Kamilla's relationship rather than his own. And aside from that, I actually thought the scene where Kyle's basically spilling his guts about, being arrested for just smaller things, but enough to get sent to prison and also get his law degree, which I totally forgot that he was lying to everyone about. I thought everyone knew he was a lawyer. I guess not. I forgot that Kyle was lying about that. But regardless, I thought it was pretty brilliant that he was talking about, that time, basically the hardships and, his experiences growing up, and he was spilling his guts to Joe. Which it's funny, when you watch the show, you're like, I love Joe. And clearly they all do too, because we keep seeing all these various castaways spilling their guts specifically to Joe. So there's clearly something about that guy that makes you want to just talk, to form a connection, to not get rid of him, to keep him around. That's why Joe's so dangerous. And I think Kyle has, in this past episode, made it very clear why he should be probably the most dangerous person in the game. But really, Joe and his relationship building is pretty special. I love what he's doing. I love that he helped change the game this episode by voting out David. Will it benefit him in the end? I hope so. However, I think usually when you take the honesty and loyalty route generally as a strategy, I think it's always going to backfire, because that's the first jury question right away. It's like, so you said you would play this game with honesty and loyalty. Did you think it was very loyal and honest to backstab me? You really kind of paint yourself in the corner with this kind of a strategy, and it sucks. I mean, you're almost admitting to being able to just lose the game. And it sounds like Joe's okay with that, though, as long as it's to Eva. But unfortunately, he may have to forfeit the game to someone else with that strategy. And I hate it because I love Joe. Joe's great. I just don't know if Joe can actually win the game considering that. So trying to look to next week, I mean, it looks like Mary's the one who's kind of on the chopping block to be voted out, but I don't feel that's what's going to happen. It's something in my bones tells me it'll probably be something like a Mitch or a Star. Like, we just had our big vote out. Let's bring back. It's either going to be that, or it's probably going to be one of the folks I don't want to see go home, like an Eva or like a Shauhin. I don't think Kyle, again, at this point, I feel pretty good about planting my flag with the statement that Kyle's going to win the game. Everything tells me that he probably will. The only people that kind of throw that off are if Eva and Joe actually do pull this thing off with this gruesome twosome alliance, but I don't think so. And I think Shauhin is too shifty. I don't think he's going to make it to the end. And obviously, I don't think Mary or Mitch or Star are going to win the game based on what I've seen. I feel pretty good about Kyle. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comment section. I would love to hear who you think your winner is. This is pretty much the midway point, and I'm super curious. I mean, David was someone I didn't think was going to win the game either, but his edit was so strong. People kept, every episode, we hear about either how his girlfriend was going to leave him if he didn't win $1 million, which, according to reports, she did, or that he loves chocolate milk and that Mary's going to console him over and over again. Like, there were so many times where David was put onto the screen, and I couldn't explain why. Unless he was going to win the game. I still didn't think he'd win the game, but I was nervous. Also, I have to tell you, this cracked me up, this commercial. Normally, Jeff Probst is saying, apply for Survivor now. This time around, he was just like, all right, you're lazy, you're fat, you're an idiot, you're not going to play the game, but we have a board game for you since you're too much of a loser to actually play the game. Jeff wasn't holding any punches this time around. But that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an absolutely amazing day, everyone. You take care. Goodbye.